Good morning, I'm Ryan Barr, co-founder of RePurpose Energy. I'm here to talk to you about reusing electric vehicle batteries because climate change is here, it's expensive, and it's deadly. But the experts say we can avoid the worst of it by producing a majority of electricity from renewable sources by 2030 and almost all of it by 2050. So who thinks the United States will accomplish these goals? Nobody. How about California? Most people. And I agree, because California is ahead of schedule to meet these targets. Solar and wind are the cheapest ways to generate electricity. The missing piece of the puzzle is affordable energy storage. And that's why we reuse electric vehicle batteries to store solar energy. And we do it at less than half the cost of new battery alternatives. So we've been doing this research since 2010 that has culminated in our commercial scale demonstration project, which is up and running in Davis. And most recently, we won a grant from the National Science Foundation to perform customer discovery. That's already resulted in 2 letters of intent to purchase from solar developers. We also won first place in the Big Ideas contest out of over 300 teams, and recently won 2 awards in the Big Bang New Venture competition as well. So the first problem that we're solving is the need for solar after sunset. And that's because in the past, electricity was most valuable in the afternoon when the sun was out. So consumers could save a lot of money by installing solar, and there wasn't much need for energy storage. But we are about half of the way to our 100% clean energy goal, and already we've installed so much solar that electricity is most valuable in the evening, not the afternoons. And this is a problem for solar companies because it cuts the amount a consumer can save by installing solar in half. But it also doubles the amount a consumer can save by adding energy storage. So the payback periods for these stationary batteries alongside solar systems are very short, and companies selling solar need to pair their solar panels with energy storage to stay in business. So that explains explosive growth projections for stationary batteries in the US. It's about a $1 billion market in the US today. It will be a $5 billion market by 2024. So that's 40% annual growth. But this growth actually pales in comparison to growth in the demand for electric vehicle batteries. You can see here, demand for EV batteries is taking off so quickly, it makes demand for those stationary batteries look almost flat by comparison. So here's the thing, 95% of all of these lithium-ion batteries historically have been landfilled because recycling is uneconomically expensive. And this can continue as electric vehicles take off. So legislation is coming to put automakers on the hook to reuse or recycle all of their electric vehicle batteries. This is a problem for them because recycling is expensive, but reuse is a great option, since 75% or more of electric vehicle battery capacity typically remains at the end of its useful life in a vehicle. So again, our joint solution to these 2 problems, the need for affordable energy storage and the need to manage electric vehicle battery waste, is to reuse EV batteries to store solar energy. And our value proposition is that we sell these used batteries to solar developers at less than half the cost of new battery alternatives. And that allows them to reduce the payback period of every solar installation that they do. It also increases the revenue that they get from each installation because now they're selling not just solar, but solar and energy storage. So in a nutshell, our technology out of UC Davis allows us to safely and efficiently reuse these EV batteries for 7 years or more. What we do is quickly and accurately test the health of these used batteries first, and then we optimize their reassembly and equip them with new proprietary controls to operate them safely and efficiently. So my co-founders are technical experts in this area with 16 years of collective experience reusing EV batteries, and I've come from management consulting for electric utilities. I focus on customers and partners. Our advisors include a clean tech investor, Gary Simon, an industry veteran who's in the audience today, and a local solar developer. So for our commercial scale demonstration that I mentioned, we reassembled about 15 used Nissan Leaf batteries in a shipping container at a winery in Davis. This is a look from the inside. And we used those batteries to store the excess solar energy during the day. And then we discharge the batteries in the evening when electricity is dirty and expensive to reduce the energy demands of the facility by about 40%. So from here, we will convert our letters of intent to purchase into initial sales of small, simple systems this year. Next year, we'll launch a whole, full-scale, fully certified product. But to do that, we need to raise about $1 million in seed funding to accelerate our time to market, especially to pursue UL certification. And we also need to establish a partnership with a software provider to better optimize basically our charge and discharge patterns to minimize the electricity bill for the end user. So in summary, the long-term success of the $25 billion solar industry in the United States depends on the cost-effective integration of energy storage. We'll meet that critical need by turning EV battery waste into value, and in doing so, we'll enable the transition to renewable energy and electric vehicles. Thanks.
Good job. You're practiced. So I get to ask the first question. How can this community help you?
Good question. Well, we need a place to install our next systems. So it could be a local business or a community, but that's the goal of that National Science Foundation program this summer, is to identify host sites basically for our next systems. And so if anyone has any leads there, I would appreciate that. Any local business, for example, that already has solar or is planning on installing solar that could use affordable energy storage should talk to us.
And are you looking for businesses that typically use a certain amount of power? Like would a 7-Eleven, for example, they probably don't use that much power.
7-Eleven would still be good. It helps if the
Not
facility...
that I know one, that was just an example.
Fair enough. It helps if the facility uses more energy in the evening between 4 and 9 p.m. specifically, because that's when electricity is most expensive now. We reduce demand during that time. We can save the customer a lot of money. But that also basically applies to facilities that have solar, because solar takes care of the demand during the day, and then there's generally demand left in the evening, and we can take care of that.
And they need to have space to put something like this.
Correct, yeah. So the trade-off is that these things take up a little more room than new batteries, and they don't last quite as long. But that generally works for customers that have shorter investment horizons. They don't want to make a 10-year investment. They want to make a shorter payback. And so that's what we offer.
I'll open it up. You can call on whomever.
All right. Yes.
Since you've already done one install at Davis, and by the way, you did a nice pitch at Davis, so I did see that there. Since you've already done an install at Davis, have you thought about doing installs, again for testing, at some of the other colleges and universities in the area? So if you want inroads there, let me know, and I will connect you with the appropriate folks at each of those so that you can do an install, again, for testing your model there.
That would be great. Yeah, I think
so I'm
universities
thinking,
are great candidates.
Thinking Los Rios, some of the different schools there. I'm thinking Sac State, maybe there. I'm thinking Sierra. So
that would be great, because this is an opportunity to educate students as well about sustainability, reuse, recycling, renewable energy, etc. So, there's a financial benefit for universities, but also an educational.
Right. So I think it's a nice tie there. So if you want, after this is over, come see me.
Great. Thank you. Jared.
So what's the discharge rate like when you take these down to 80% state of charge? Is that a 4-hour discharge cycle or 1 hour, or what is it that you are intending?
It's flexible. So the existing system is a 5-hour system. So we discharge at a constant rate throughout 4 to 9 p.m. That's what the grant from the California Energy Commission dictated. That's what paid for the system. But in general, a lot of the systems today are about 2 hours in duration, but the trend is towards longer duration, just because the way rate structures are changing, that's the incentive. And so that actually benefits our model. When you have longer duration systems, you need more batteries, and so the cost advantage really comes in handy. So it could go all the way up to 4, 5, 6 hours.
On the software partner side, what are you looking for in a software in operations? Is that what you're looking at?
So specifically, it's called an energy management system. And that's separate from the battery management system, which we do. So there are sort of two levels of controls. The battery management system basically monitors the temperature, current, voltage of all the batteries to make sure it's operating safely. But the energy management system basically tells the batteries when to charge, when to discharge, and how fast to optimize savings for the end user. And that energy management system is not our strength. Existing firms have been doing that for new batteries for years, and so we'd like to partner on that front to take advantage of all the progress that they've made.
Are you actively searching, or you've identified targets, or where are you at in that process? How
So-
can I help?
So we've gotten quotes from a couple. We could just buy one, but we'd like to make more of a strategic partnership with someone that also has sales channels that we can access, for example. So we have a couple leads, but we're open to ideas, and we'll be interviewing that stakeholder group during the National Science Foundation program this summer too. So we haven't made a decision yet, and I definitely appreciate recommendations.
I'll follow up with you.
Great.
So, crazy question perhaps, but my dad, who's in his 80s, told me the other day he had this great idea with PG&E shutting the power down to get rid of, for wildfire danger, that people could have battery storage where they could store power off the grid and use from the grid and use that. I'm thinking there's got to be some regulation against that, but I don't know if there is. But anyway, is there any reason? Does that make any sense? And is it legal? Do you know? And is that an alternative? Is saving energy beyond solar, like from other sources?
It's not crazy. It's a great idea. It makes sense. You can store solar energy. You can store electricity from the grid, and you can use that for backup power. And batteries can provide, a certain length of backup power. But the problem is that these shutdowns might last 24, 48 hours, I'm hearing, because utilities need to go out and manually inspect all of the lines before they can restore power. And so it's pretty hard for a battery to meet all of the facility's demands for that long. And so it's a good idea to store a battery, for backup power for a few hours, but for a critical facility that really needs reliable energy, they probably still need a diesel generator, for example, for reliable backup power. So it's a good idea. It's an option.
So my dad's not crazy, I'll tell
Yeah.
him.
I am curious how you're getting your inputs, the used batteries.
How we're getting what?
Your inputs, the used batteries.
Right. So we have a strong partnership with Nissan. They've donated many batteries over the years. We have an agreement going forward. So we get batteries from them that drivers take to dealerships and say, replace this battery because it's not up to warranty, or I want to pay for more range. And so they send those to us.
So as far as the, selling the batteries to, I think you were saying car dealerships, or I forgot who your customer is.
Solar companies, yeah.
So solar companies and the customers that they're selling those products to. Say for instance they hear that it's reused. How would you be able to kind of get over maybe the mental hurdle for most, customers? Because there's a lot of educated customers out there that, will actually prefer that. But for those that are kind of hesitant, how do you kind of get over that hurdle?
So we're finding that a lot of customers prefer used batteries because they worry about where these things go after they're used. They're making this decision for ideological, environmental reasons, and so they like used batteries for that reason. But for those that aren't interested in that sustainability advantage, we're less than half the cost of new batteries, so it's purely an economic decision. We can tell them this will cost you less, the investment will pay back sooner, and so it's the way to go.
And is there like a warranty or something like that to kind of ease their concerns a little bit as well?
Right, so we do offer a warranty. Our warranty will be 7 years, and for new batteries it's typically 10 years. And it's a challenge for us that we're a startup company, so our warranty doesn't mean as much to them as it would if they were working with, someone like Tesla. But we're working through that as much as we can. And Nissan can sort of help back us a little bit because they have that strong brand name. And so with them in our corner, it helps us get over that warranty hurdle. Yep.
If the batteries are not going from the leak to your storage solution, they're going to landfill. So your storage solution provides an extra life for the second life of these batteries. What is the lifespan of that second life for these batteries? When do they become spent? When do they become unusable for your solution, where they then have to be landfilled or recycled or used for something else?
Yeah, so we can typically reuse the batteries for about 7 years, charging and discharging them fully every day, and we only lose an additional 20% of the capacity. So over 7 years, we can take it from like 70% to 50%, for example. And then it is possible to recycle. It's just a big expense, and it's not a very efficient process. You don't get a lot of valuable materials out of that.
So for your solution, once it drops below 50% capacity, you have to be removable.
Right, that's what we're thinking. It could maybe go further, but at that point, it'll probably make more sense to refresh the batteries with so much higher capacity. Yep.
So instead of putting them in landfill, maybe you could send them to Trump and he could use them to build the wall between here and Mexico.
Yeah, that's not a crazy idea either. I admittedly didn't read the study, but there was one about all of the solar and wind you could use to basically, instead of the wall, and you could power the whole region. It would be economically prosperous. Yeah, I like the way you're thinking.
Other questions?
With your $1 million you're seeking for seed funding, what are you looking to use that for?
Right. So UL certification is the biggest thing. We could be the first UL certified used battery product. It would be great for us. And so to do that, there are testing and filing fees and stuff like that. But we also need to establish a process in our own private workspace. And so that's the other part of the expense. We can't do that in our university lab. We can't assemble products on university property without owing them a bunch of equity or something down the road. So the primary use of the funding will be to move into a private workspace, assemble initial products, and get our battery packs UL certified.
What does that mean? Sorry.
So UL is basically the certifying body for most electronics. So your phone is UL certified, all the components in it are UL certified, your appliances at home are probably certified by UL too. So they test electronics and basically put their stamp on it to say that it's safe. And fire marshals need to see that to allow our batteries to be installed, solar companies need that, and so we need that.
UL stands for Underwriters Laboratory. It began as a way to assure insurance companies that equipment was safe and wouldn't cause a fire and result in a flame.
Yeah, once you hear underwriter, it's like, okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
So are you licensing your technology from UC Davis, or do you own it?
So there are no patents to license at this point. We've held off on that for various reasons. And so we probably will have to sign a know-how license, which basically will just grant them some portion of equity in the company in exchange for all the support they've given us over the years.
Mm-hmm. And have you been speaking to investors yet, or is that a future thing in terms of actually trying to fundraise?
We have been, and we have a few good leads. We're not on a roadshow quite yet, but it's in the near future. So later this year, we'll be looking to raise that investment.
Do they have any concerns about UC Davis having some equity?
Not if it's contractual and finalized. So we need to still finish negotiations with the university and make that agreement contractual. Their concern is that they don't know exactly how much of a claim the UC Davis is going to make. And so that's what we're working on now.
And is there a plan to file a patent for any of your technology? And if you did, would UC Davis be the patent holder?
No, we'll be doing it independently. So on the technology, we protect our battery testing algorithms using trade secrets. Same with our reassembly algorithms. The proprietary controls actually come from an exclusive licensing agreement with a South Korean technology provider. And then we have plans to patent a non-destructive fire suppression system, for example, but that will be after we finish our transition out of UC Davis.
And the $1 million, what's your timeline in terms of when you want to raise that?
So later this year, ideally, and then next year we'll look for Series A to basically expand our team, ramp up production, and open up some new revenue streams that we didn't talk about today. So seed funding this year, Series A next year, ideally.
Okay. Other questions?
I could throw one out there then. So outside of the UL certification that you're waiting on, what other barriers to entry are there for someone else entering into this space?
Well, it's hard to get Nissan's attention, for example, and it's really challenging to manage the variable characteristics of used batteries, and that's what our team has so much experience doing. You need a battery management system that accounts for the variable states of health of each battery.
So is that battery testing?
It's really this, battery management system and how to do this quickly and effectively, cheaply.
Is that process, are you seeking out patent or anything on
It's
that?
better protected by trade secrets, in our opinion. You know, it's an internal process that we don't need to put out there in the form of a patent that would just give people more information about what we're doing.
Have you thought about what happens after the 7 years? Do people just like throw away the batteries? Do you take them back? What is that process?
So our initial revenue model will be just cash sales of the battery to a solar developer, and so they'll be responsible for disposal. But eventually we want to own and operate these systems for a number of reasons, and it is possible again to recycle the batteries after the 7 years that we reuse them. It's an expense, and it's one we're willing to pay just because we're committed to doing environmental good with our products.
Okay, so as you build these things, who's actually doing the construction? Like who's taking the batteries and putting them in the container?
That's us.
That's you. So as you grow, you'll have to hire people or contract with people to do that.
Right. Yeah, and so that labor for testing and reassembly is factored into our cost advantage. And so it adds, we get batteries really cheaply from Nissan, and then it costs us a little bit to test and reassemble, but then we still come in at less than half the cost of new batteries.
And are you looking at staying in the Sacramento region as you grow?
We are, yeah. Either Sacramento region or East Bay, but we're not going far from here.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.